Now questions from Marcus and then Massimo.
Yeah, thank you very much. Do you have an explanation of why specifically intelligence mythology, you mentioned fiction and marketing and so forth, captures our attention? So do you have a psychological explanation, an economic explanation? Because this is itself, of course, an interesting topic for a serious research project. Why metaphysics? Because currently it is metaphysics to believe that something we have produced is, could be conscious or whatever, because, as a matter of fact, we don't know. There's no such thing. So thinking, that it's either way is an exercise in metaphysics. So what's your explanation for, you mentioned marketing as an option, so I would just like to know if this is what you go for. Is it just good marketing? Is it marketing informed by psychology, nudging and so forth? Or
marketing use that and advertising since a long time. And I'm involved in an ethical committee for that point. So we try to deconstruct these stereotypes, okay, for the problem of gender, but also racial, social problems. So it's not new. But the fact is, with this machine, it could be very amplified.
Okay, thank you. I have many names on my list, so please be brief. Massimo.
One comment linked to the previous presentation. So my understanding from the previous presentation is that we are very far in artificial intelligence still to move to the second phase and to have certain of predictive power. So what I would like in artificial intelligence is for the machine or whatever to predict things for me. So it's going to rare events, okay? Now, when I see the type of applications that you show, it clearly reflects that, because most of the applications are responding to demands that already exist. So basically, they are not doing nothing on predictive power. So how we can, seems to me like it's more a service provision through a different element, which in this case is a robot or an image, but what they are giving to me is something that already somebody else is doing. It's not something new. It's something that is creating more demand-supply interaction and predictive power to my potential demands.
It is new. Affective computing system is not so long-term. It's from 1970, and there's not a lot of services in AI that use this tracking of your emotions. Something new, okay? Technological point of view, there is a lot of things that are new. And the fact that we have this machine all the time at home with Google Home or Alexa Amazon will be also very new. The consequence of that we don't know. So the long-term surveillance of this kind of machine, I don't know if someone has some experiment of that, but there is no research about that. But effectively, we have to take care about the fact that we want to put a conscience in a machine or take something like cyborg, but at the contrary, we have to take care immediately, currently now, because there is already this kind of system with maybe not a technology very advanced. But if you look at Black Mirror, there is this series, a famous series, only with like and dislike you can do very bad things. Okay, but there is some new thing, and there's a lot of attractivity about emotion for economical point of view. So,
okay.
And this manipulation will be everywhere.
Okay, thank you. Now, Angela, please.
Thank you very much. I found the presentation really fascinating. And I think we all agree that when it comes to elderly people and using robots to basically help them to empathize, to also bring them out of their social isolation, to provide sort of some dialogue, etc. One of the things, and I'd seen that Japanese video before, and I thought it was really, I was saying to Frankie, I said it was really pretty creepy, frankly. But on the other hand, what I find really interesting is that when you look at young children, and I've been around a fair number of them quite recently, and even Greg already mentioned this morning that his son swears at Siri, for example. But I find that what should be studied is also the effect on young children about interacting with robots, because it is absolutely terrifying that these kids are really capable of having a decent conversation with another human being, maybe with other kids, but then it's all about the computer and it's all about the assistant, etc. But they throw tantrums if it's taken away from them, and I really think there's very little that I have seen that is studied of these effects, and it's basically up to the parents to control that, but with both parents working very often or being left to a nanny, whatever, you can see where this really goes into the background. And I just sort of fear, what is our society going to look like when you can't really talk to younger children, or even when they come to the teenagers, they're just sitting there and they're just looking at screens and interacting with whatever is there. And I believe that that really should be something that is studied. But I wanted to make one final comment, and that is that I really found that many of the presentations fascinating, but I was sorry that not all of this was reflected in the papers, because I think the papers would be really immensely enriched if some also of the visual effects are highlighted here or included, and I just wanted to make that recommendation in case there is a publication coming out of it. Thank you.
Now, Gregory, please.
Just for the record, my son is no longer swearing at Siri, okay? But I have set a bad example because he sees me swearing at lots of inanimate things, all right? So anyway, but there was a lot that I'd like to discuss with you. But it was just one sentence that caught my attention because it has enabled me to raise an issue that has come up at several junctures already. You said that robots cannot, there's no abstraction, robots or artificial intelligence-based systems like a robot do not have a capacity for abstraction. And I'm unable to make a judgment about that. But in the philosophical literature, the result of an abstraction is what's called a universal. And with a universal, and what's characteristic of a universal is it simply is not reducible to resemblances between many objects. So Plato would say there's more to a circle than the resemblance between many circles. In fact, you can't see a circle. No one ever saw a circle, right? So what comes out of this, and this is something I think has been lacking in maybe nearly all of the earlier discussions, is there's this assumption that somehow thought, universals, consciousness emerges out of matter of some special sort. So all the discussions are, can the sort of matter of the very special sort that we have be refashioned into an artificial entity? But the argument that philosophers like Plato raised is that there's something in our ability to think, cognize a universal, that transcends matter. So then the real problem is how did that ability get into us? Right? And there are different theories, like there's a separate agent intellect, that was the notion Averroes had. But once you put that ability in ourselves, that's what Aquinas' idea. The agent intellect is individual to each and every one of us. Then the question is, how did we get that ability? Where did it come from? It can't come from matter. So that's why Aquinas ends up mounting an argument that the subsistent soul of a human being, that by which we can cognize the universal, must be created directly by God. It can't result from the transmutations of matter. So I don't know. So what should we conclude based on whether machines could ever have our capabilities? I wouldn't say that a machine can never get that capability, but the thing is there a way for that sort of non-material capability, they call it an immaterial capability, is there any way that we could be able to introduce that into an artificial entity? So I just had to get that out. Thanks very much for listening.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Gregory. Now, Gilles, please.
Yeah, I had a short remark on your question. This narrative of people creating human-like entities, we have had such narrative for 25 centuries. And they were made of ivory, clay, body parts, whatever. And it's only in the last century that they were called either robots, computers, or AI. So if we want to study this narrative, we should not focus on the very last episode of the story, because it's a very, very long history. And in my view, the social functioning of this narrative or myth is because they touch two very interesting problems. But these problems are completely independent of what we are discussing today, and this is why we should not discuss them the same day. One is a question of humility versus hubris of mimicking the creation, and it's always ethical plea for humility. And the other is the border between the human and the non-human, which is a recurring question with the Valladolid debate, for instance, in the 16th century, or when we ask the question whether women do have soul and so on, have a soul and so on, which is the real definition of the border of humanity. And these are two explanations of why these myths are famous, but we should more focus on Pinocchio than on 2001 Space Odyssey if we want to understand them.
Thank you. Stefano, the last one.
Yeah, thank you, Lawrence. It is in common parlance, we tend to confuse or conflate two different concepts, choice and decision. But we know the problem of choice is completely different from a problem of decision. Because to solve a choice problem, we need the rationality, defined one way or the other. And that is what artificial intelligence can do. Perhaps they can do it even better than human beings. But to solve a decision problem, we need what Aristotle called phronesis, and what Aquinas added as gnome, which is a virtue. Now, by definition, no machines can acquire gnome, by definition of the notion of virtue. So it seems in your one of the last slides you showed, you indicated that these new machines can decide. It seems to me that it's impossible they cannot decide, unless you confuse this decision with choice, which is common. But if we want to be precise, decision is something. This decision in Latin means to cut. And decidere in Latin means to cut. You must be able, and to be able to cut, you need a virtue, which has nothing to do with the rationality. How do you react to this consideration? Thank you.
But I think that, if I understand what you have said, we are not rational in a sense of machine, human, okay? We have all different perception of the same things. This is our richer together, not richness together. So the machine will be, we chose something and not decide, you're right. But they can choose a lot of things which will have consequence for us. That's this loop, which is in my interest, and maybe it's not a good term for that. But that decide or choice, take into account knowledge that I put on the machine from data set, from the behavior of people.
Okay, thank you very much.